The issue really here is we do need to have people at the consumer end think about this and to modify their behavior. Now, there is research that my own organization did about 4 or 5 years ago, where we were looking at telecom consumers and electricity consumers, micro enterprises in particular. And what we were looking at was the possibility of using behavioral economics, which is one of the more interesting and new branches of economics that is coming in. And some of the experience of countries. So, for example, in the United Kingdom, they had something called the nudge unit. I think in Obama's White House, they also had some kind of behavioral economics unit that was looking at a lot of forms and policies and suggesting how they could be improved so that people respond to them better. But Singapore, I think, is a classic example where you have this variable road pricing. And in the old days, you just, the way we think about road pricing is that we think of fixed amounts. Even London today is talking about fixed amounts. But in Singapore, what they were doing was they were trying to communicate through the medium of the road price to the customer so that the customer would modify their behavior. The objective being not to make as much money as possible from people driving around Singapore in the middle of the day, but to encourage them to not use vehicles during high congestion pricing periods and to get them to leave their cars outside the congested areas and to take public transport. So in order to do that, you had to have equipment that would communicate the increased prices and prices that were kind of almost responding to congestion rather than set fixed prices. So that's the kind of logic that is necessarily for effective demand side management. But then, we come back after work and you're tired and you're watching TV, and the last thing you want to do is to go and look at the damn meter to see how much the kilowatt hour is being charged at that time. And I can imagine the political resistance to that in countries like ours or even in England, unlike in Singapore, where they seem to take all these things in good spirit. So short of that, what can we do? We can have time of day pricing. I think Professor Vijaypala referred to that. And my understanding is that there is the beginning of time of day pricing has been introduced so that people can charge electric cars at night and something like that. Some first baby step has been taken. I may be wrong, but that's what I was informed. And then, of course, you have this whole idea that if you can have some forms of differential pricing. Now, in telecom, of course, we've had differential pricing for a long time. And it was, I've been teaching this stuff for a long time. But I can remember when we provided an extraordinarily low amount starting at 11 p.m. And people were calling me and talking to me on talk shows and saying, you're making us stay up at night and so on and so forth, right? But then when I actually looked at the diurnal use patterns, I saw that the peak in the Gampaha district had actually shifted to 11. People were waiting to do dial-up. I mean, those days, all of us did dial-up to get to the internet. The peak had actually shifted to 11 p.m. So people were being responsive to time of day pricing in a radical way. I mean, the thing was that I persuaded the telecom operators to offer this radical, it was a radically lower amount after 11 p.m. But anyway, so the question that is there is if you do that, you have to communicate this message. And lots and lots of experiments have been done in a number of countries where we found that you have to use the bill as a way of communicating this. And we made some specific recommendations to the CB and LECO a few years back about how the bill design could be used to improve how people respond. So instead of saying, you are a heavy energy user, or during these certain hours or something like that, you say 90% of the people in your area are doing this, or 70% of these people are doing such and such. Why don't you, getting people to align with the group is easier than just telling them do this or do that. So there's a whole lot of things that can be done on that. But again, what you see is that technology is going to allow us to do advanced billing. The technology is going to allow us to do time of day pricing. And then you need something on the analog side, not purely digital, to make the real outcomes achieved. That is effective communication of the potential that has now been created by the technology. My last point is not going to take very much time. I'll be very brief on the last point. It's about vulnerability. Uh, Resilience and responding to crisis means that we have to think about vulnerability throughout our discussion, throughout everything that we do. So the more digital technology that you introduce, the more is the vulnerability to ill-intentioned people, hackers, whatever you like to call them, coming in and attacking your system. Now, this has happened before. We are not talking science fiction here. We are talking about various countries probing the electrical systems, which are by all means falling within the realm of critical infrastructure, probing these systems to see how they can manipulate them, shut them down, do various things. So I think as we move towards a smart energy future with the leadership or the catalysis that is provided by the Smart Energy Council, we have to keep in mind the need to address vulnerability from the word go. Thank you very much.